Welcome to another video lesson, students. In this lesson, we are going to be going over the basic vocabulary for geometry. Okay, so you should have access to this template. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to read the instructions here. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that. Okay, so what you have to do is you cut on the dotted lines and glue under each gray flap in your notes. Now, I'm not going to cut every single one of them individually. Okay, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put this away, and then I'm going to model for you how to cut each section. I'm going to cut one of them for you, and then you should be able to do the rest. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the first section here. Okay, so this, I'm going to follow this dotted line. And I hope you can see that on the camera. Okay, so there is the first one. And I'm going to cut this margin off, and I'm going to go all the way up. Okay, so there's that side, and I'm also going to do the same thing here on this side. Then I'm going to cut here. Okay, see that dotted line? I'm going to cut through there. Okay, now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut each one of these dotted lines, and I'm not going to cut all the way through because I want to keep them connected. Okay, I'm going to cut a little bit more here. And then notice that I didn't cut all the way through. Okay, I did not cut all the way through, and I'm going to do the same thing with the next one here. And on this one, I almost went all the way through. Okay, but the point is, this is what you should have once you're done cutting. Okay? Okay, before I do anything else, notice that now I have a notebook. I'm going to, you can either glue or tape each one of these flaps onto your notebook. Okay, so I'm going to first write the title of this, I don't want to say lesson, but of this activity. So this is basic geometry vocabulary. Okay, so that's the title of the lesson. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut a piece of tape. Again, you can use either tape or a glue stick, and we are going to glue this onto our notebook. I prefer tape because it's going to stay there for a longer period of time, and I'm going to tape mine close to the top of the page. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to line this up so that it's as best as possible. Now again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I'm just trying to, since I'm giving you an example, I'm trying to do this as best as possible. So there you have it. And now I'm going to tape this onto my journal. All right. So there is the first one. And what you do is you do the same with the rest of them. I'm going to pause the video again, and so you can watch what I did, and then we'll see if that helps you. Okay, so I haven't taped any of these yet. All right. So my advice is just line them up, lay them out, and then you can start taping from there, and tape every single one of them individually. Okay, mine are all taped now. Now notice the advantage of this is we're going to write the term here, the name of the term on each one of these flaps, and then once we have the term, we're going to give some description or definition underneath each flap. So that's the purpose of this, and this will help you keep your notes as organized as possible. And I'm hoping that this will make it easier for you. Okay. Okay, so here I'm just showing you the definition for now. Okay, so this is point, and I'm going to call this point B. Okay, And this is a line, and that's going to be line CD. I'm just naming the points, and or line N. And then this one, I named these points A, B, C. Okay, so just write that down for now, and then I'm going to flip each one of them open so you can see what the description of each one of these is. Okay, this is the first flap, and notice that I plotted a point. I named this point B, so we would say this is point B, so that would be the name, point B. And this in geometry is an undefined term, and it just helps us represent a location, and it has no sides or thickness. The next term is line, and this line I wrote C and D, and this helped me name the line. So there are two ways that we can name this line. So this would be line CD, that symbol, that line above the two letters means it's a line, or DC, or line N by this N here. Okay, so you can name that line in those three different ways. The next term is it's for a plane. Okay, and I have points A, B, and C, and these points, the name of those points are going to help me name the plane. And notice that it also has cursive R right here, and I can also use that to help me name the plane. Okay, so again, this is also an undefined term, which represents, it's just a flat surface that extends infinitely in all directions, and it must contain at least 3 points. And notice the points, there are the 3 points, and the points are not on the same line. And the ways we can name this plane are plane ABC or plane R. Okay? So these 3 terms in geometry are the building blocks of everything we're going to do this year. And notice that they are undefined. So just keep that in mind. Okay, the next 3 terms, line, segment. So it has 2 endpoints. That means it's just part of a line. And notice that this is point Y, this is point Z, and that's just to help us name the segment. So we would use this symbol to say that it's a segment. Notice that it's not a line above those 2 letters. So it's either a line segment YZ or ZY. And this one does have length. So this is defined. That means we can measure it. And it has 2 endpoints. So, okay, as you can see here. The next one is a ray. And notice this is the starting point, and this is the direction in which this ray is going. So this is not an endpoint. Keep that in mind. X is the endpoint, and that matters when you name the ray. So the definition of this one, in this case, we can only name it a ray XY. Why? Because it goes from X in the direction of Y. We cannot name this YX, because that would mean that Y is the endpoint, but in this case, you can see that that's not the case. Okay, so, and it has only one endpoint, and it's part of a line. All right, the next one is an angle. Notice that I have 3 letters on the angle to name each point. So this is point M, N, and O, and that's going to help me name the angle. So I'm going to flip this one open, and these are the ways we can name the angle. Angle M and O, and angle O and M, or angle 1. Why? Notice that N is in the middle. Why? Because it's the vertex point. Okay, so N cannot be at first or last. It's got to be in the middle. And there is a 1 inside of this angle, so that's why it can also be called an angle 1. The definition of this is it has 1 vertex, which is the middle letter, in this case the letter N or point N, and it's made up of or formed by 2 rays, which are the sides. So this is ray NO and this is ray NM. Okay, on to the next 3 terms. So collinear points. Collinear, why? Because the lines are on, the points are on the same line, so that's what makes them collinear. So how would you define this one? So this is the definition. It's points together on the same line. Okay, so as long as the points lie on the same line, they are called collinear points. Okay? All right. The next term is coplanar. Coplanar, notice you have a point here, you have 1, 2, 3 points, you have a line, and you have a ray. And all of these objects, geometric objects, are on the same plane, so they are called coplanar. So the definition is anything together on the same plane. Anything meaning it could be a quadrilateral, a triangle. As long as they are on the same plane, they are coplanar. All right, on to the next one. You've done this before. Acute angle, less than 90 degrees. Right angle, exactly 90 degrees. Obtuse angle, greater than 90 degrees. And straight angle, is equal to 180 degrees. So here you just have the definition of each one of them, okay? So go ahead and write that down, and then we continue on to the next three terms. Okay, so here, let's go over parallel lines. Notice those arrows on top of those lines or on those two lines, that tells you that the lines are parallel. Okay, so the lines are parallel. This line is called L, and this one is called N. And the definition, and this is how we say lines are parallel. You have L, and then you have two lines kind of diagonal, or they might also be just vertical. And that just means that lines L and N are parallel. The definition in geometry is that they are lines that never intersect. Okay, the next one is perpendicular lines, and this is line H, this is line G. Okay, and when they intersect, they form right angles. So that's a definition of perpendicular lines in geometry. And we use this notation or symbol to represent perpendicular. So this is saying line G is perpendicular to line H. And the definition is lines that intersect to form right angles. Okay, and that goes with the diagram. All right, the next term and last one on this row, skew lines. Notice this line is on this side of this prism, and this line is on this side of that prism. And as you can see from here, these two lines are not going to intersect. Why? Because they're lying on different planes. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the definition of this of skew lines. Skew lines are lines that lie on different planes and they do not intersect. So now we're adding something else to your knowledge when it comes to geometry. So far you only knew that parallel lines don't intersect, but now you also have skew lines are lines that do not intersect because they are on different planes. Okay. All right, the last row, this one is adjacent angles, and that just means that they have a side in common. So this right here belongs to this angle and also to this angle. So angle 1 and angle 2 have this ray in common. So that makes them adjacent angles. The definition of adjacent angles is two angles with a common vertex and a common side. And adjacent means that they are next to each other. Okay. Now the next one is angle bisector. An angle bisector, so for example, this right here, the one in bold, okay, this one is cutting the big angle into two equal parts. So you, when you see a bisector, just understand that it's going to create an angle. Okay, it's going to cut the angle into two equal angles. And these two arcs mean congruent. Okay, so that means the angles are congruent. And the definition here is a ray that divides an angle into two congruent adjacent angles. Adjacent because they have this ray in common. Okay. And congruent because they're being bisected. To bisect means to cut in half. Okay, the last term. The last term, it's for midpoint. So midpoint, notice we have segment, I added A and B. Okay, and this is point M. And these markings here, that means that this point is in the middle of segment AB. So that's why it's called the midpoint. And what the midpoint does is it's going to create two congruent segments. So that means AM is equal to MB. Okay. So we say that by saying here the following. So AM, segment AM, is congruent to segment AB. I'm sorry, MB. And this symbol means congruent. So the definition of a midpoint is a point that divides a segment into two congruent segments. Okay, if you need to rewatch this video or pause it so you can see each one of the definitions, do whatever you need to do, but just make sure you get all of these notes. All right, until the next time.